I'm the Book Baron. Welcome in, everybody. So today we are going to be wrapping up October, and what a month it's been. I spent, and I'm so sorry for my regular subscribers, I know you've heard this a million times, I spent the first half of my month traveling a whole bunch. So I really didn't think I was gonna get to as many books as I did. So I'm really impressed, honestly, with the volume of books that I was able to get to, because I didn't finish a book until like midway through the month. So I'm surprised I'm even doing a wrap up, to be totally honest. Funny enough, even though I would say that I actually have like fewer books than I normally would, obviously that's to be expected because I wasn't even reading on the planes when I was traveling. I was sleeping through all of my flights. I was so exhausted. But even though I don't have so many books, my page count is actually higher than last month. Well, I read one really thick book and I think that really made the difference. I had a pretty fun time with my reading this month. A lot of the books that I read were like 3.5, 4 stars. I think in my TBR, I described the experience as very zen. I was just enjoying a lot of the books that I was reading. Even the books that I decided to DNF, a lot of those, it was just like, this just wasn't really what I was looking for and I just wanted to move on. Also, I can hear my voice starting to go a little bit. I'm recording this after Halloween weekend. My voice is sounding a little raspy, so hopefully she holds up. I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm a little bit nasally or sick. That's the short version of how October went, and let's get into the books. Starting off, we have my vlog books, which I will link up here if you want to see more of my in-depth thoughts. I'm gonna try and go faster through these. We'll see if I can do it. The first book is Nocticadia by Keri. This is a standalone, dark, gothic romance. It's kind of got elements of dark academia and some elements of a horror. This centers on our heroine, Lila, and she lost her mother to this very mysterious illness. But the funny thing is, no one actually believes her. They're like, your mother completed suicide. There are no bugs. There is no disease. And so she wants to study this illness that took her mother's life, but she doesn't know how to even go about it because she doesn't even know if it's real. She ends up writing this paper in one of her biology classes at the community college. And it's there that the professor realizes this is a real illness that you're actually talking about. And I know people that are studying it, and gets her accepted conditionally into the very prestigious Nocticadia University, which is on this like island. I think it's off of Mayne or something like that. And it's like old money type of school and very prestigious, kind of like Ivy League adjacent. And it's here where she starts getting into her pathology classes that she encounters a man that is nicknamed Dr. Death. So he's really cherry, as you can tell. He's kind of got this like mysterious air, but also he is very hot. And he is the man on this campus that is probably most renowned for his work on this illness. And so she wants to cozy up to him in more ways than one. Thoughts on this? I enjoyed this a ton. I thought this had a great eerie campus, so it kind of had that blend of like gothic and dark academia. The spookiness of the illness and the horror elements, there's some body horror, was like both disgusting but also well executed. There was that little bit of a forbidden taboo romance as well. I think though, honestly, my biggest gripe with this book is that there's so many elements, right? We've got this romance, we've got this university, we've got this illness, we've got this kind of like vigilantism and this like secret society. There's so many different pieces. I just think this book should have been longer because I think there was so many pieces that could have been a little bit better baked out had we had more page count. And this bad boy is already really thick. It's a really fun read. Depending on the day, I kind of like vacillate between like a 3.5 and a 4 star, but really enjoyed this one. So next up in the vlog was Her Soul for Revenge by Harley Laroux. This is the second book in the, what is it called? Souls trilogy. I'm gonna say that this is a proper series. I'm not gonna say that this is interconnected, even though they each follow different couples. You're gonna ruin the timeline for yourself if you just jump in at book 2. So definitely read Her Soul to take the first book before you jump into this bad boy. This is a paranormal, it's got demons and gods and stuff like that. This is about Juniper, and Juniper barely escapes a cult that tried to sacrifice her to a god. And she's been on the run ever since. There's these like demons and other paranormal beings that are coming after her because they can smell the magic on her from being almost sacrificed. She's been on the run for a long time and she's starting to get tired. And this is when a very particular demon named Zane kind of pops up. And he's like, hey, I know you're gonna get real tired of running at some point. Call me when that happens. There's a deal to be made here. And eventually she does get tired. She does decide to call this demon and she offers her soul in exchange for bloody vengeance. Zane is more than happy to help her execute on this because this demon is just a little bit obsessed. So her soul is the down payment, but her body's gonna pay for the rest. My thoughts on this one. This one for me, I'm gonna say was not bad by any stretch, but definitely left me really disappointed because the timeline of this book is so interwoven with the first book. I just didn't feel like I was getting a lot of unique scenes or unique plot points where I didn't know where it was going or what it was building to, or it just kind of lost the excitement. I knew the beats that we were going to continue to hit throughout the story. There were still some good action scenes. There were some unique perspectives that we got that we didn't get from the prior book. Overall, I just wasn't very gripped by the plot. And then the romance was pretty instant. That didn't ever really get baked out or developed all that well. It's a fine installment in the series, but nothing really to write home about. This one, I gave a rating of 3 stars. And finally, in that vlog, I read Mate by Hazelwood. This is the second book. Again, this is technically interconnected, but I think you're gonna spoil the first book, so definitely read Bride first. That's the first book in this series. These are paranormal wolf shifter romances, or this one is, but there's also vampires in this world. So our heroine is Serena, and she reveals some very important information that people in power really did not want to get out, especially the vampires. And so the vampires, they're starting to come after her, and they're making some attempts on her life. But the good news is she has a secret weapon. She has a mate. Her mate just so happens to be the very feared alpha of the Northwest Pack. So he swoops in to protect her, and he's like, you're gonna come live with me, you're gonna come live with my pack, and this is how we're gonna protect you from these vampires that are coming after you. But living together presents some complications for both of them. For our heroine, it's a little bit difficult to keep some secrets that she's got regarding some health, and she's also trying to look into her family history a little bit more, which is a little bit complex and a little bit difficult, especially because Cohen is very protective of the pack's history and just doesn't seem to really want to reveal a whole ton. And despite agreeing that they do not want to be together in any real capacity, there's a lot of sexual tension pretty immediately with them living together. So this book was truly just such a fun read. This took all the best parts of Bride and just like ramped it up. The world got more rich. The politics are interesting and complex. The banter had me laughing. The sexual tension was so high and there was so much good forced proximity. But I think what kept me from like truly loving it is I just needed a little bit more romance. Specifically, I needed like a little bit more emotions and like emotional depth to it because they were there. They were trying to prevent their feelings from being hurt. They were trying to protect themselves emotionally, but it never felt like it really grappled with a lot of those feelings, except for like right at the end. And I wanted to explore more of that because I think that really would have made the relationship a lot more rich. Because a lot of times when there was going to be an emotional moment, there would be like humor or like a plot point would kind of like jump in and sort of like break that up. And I think that's really what made me not fully love it, but it was so good. This one I've asked between 4 and 4.5 stars. So next up, I read Carnal Urges, and this is by J.T. Geissinger. This is the second book in the Queens and Monsters series. This is a mafia romance, and it's definitely capture captive. This is another one I would recommend reading in order. You don't have to, but I think the setup of this book doesn't make a ton of sense if you don't. Sloane is an outsider. She's actually not part of the mafia. And yes, she may have casually dated some made men, but she's definitely not an insider. And yet, Declan, the head of the Irish mob, blames her for starting a war between the Russians and the Irish. So he ends up snatching her up in an act of vengeance, and very quickly, she has his entire crew, including him, eating out of her hand. This is one that I did as a buddy read. I think I've mentioned it prior. This one I really enjoyed. I think there was a lot to love. More great banter. J.T. Geissinger's banter is so good. Sloane is so farming? What? Yes. She's farming. She's a hoe. Sloane is so charming and charismatic, and she really leaps off the page. She is just one of those people that you read and you're like, immediately I want to be friends with her. And so she's a very fun character to follow, and she's also very capable. She can definitely take care of herself. She's not really looking to be wifed up. She just wants to go her own way. Declan is this very strong, capable presence, and he can not only take her shit, but just absolutely dish it right back. He has a She's Mine scene with a rocket launcher. That's a new standard. But I have to admit, I did find this one to be a little bit of a letdown, sadly. I was expecting this because I loved Sloane so much in that first book. This was going to be 5 stars, no notes. As much as I love Sloane, and she still makes a great main character, I just don't think this had enough plot. There was a lot of sitting around being captive. Declan was off doing something and coming back and then being mad because she didn't listen to the orders that he had. And I think if we had just gotten a little bit more plot within the mafia, especially because Sloane is so capable. I think it would have been a lot more interesting, especially because the bit of plot that we did get was like mafia adjacent. It was so odd. As much as I love this couple, it's a great installment. I think my expectations were just a little bit too high because this was a very solid book. I give it a rating of 4 stars. So next up, this is a wild one. I have been seeing this one everywhere, and it's Leave Me Behind by K.M. Moronova. This is a standalone. This is enemies to lovers and a military romance. And I never thought that I would read a military romance. And yet here we are. So this centers on our heroine, Nell, and she is the sole survivor of her elite dark forces squad called Riot. So they went on a mission in Patagonia. Things went south, and she's the only one that made it out alive. Because she's got a very specialized skill set, and there's not a ton of elite dark force squads, she ends up getting transferred to one of the other ones. Her new squad is going to be called Malum. On her flight over to make this transfer, Nell decides to have a little fun, and she ends up sleeping with a guy that she is sat next to on the plane who's very dark and mysterious. Turns out he is the very feared member of the Malum squad called Bones, and this is her new comrade and her direct superior. His squad is about to make her life hell because they lost a very beloved member of their team during the Patagonia mission, and they really blamed the Riot squad because they never showed up. And now we have to have this member of their squad who suspiciously survived. They are going to torment her to try and get her to quit because they don't want her anywhere near them. Wow. I mean, if ever I was going to read a military romance, let it be so dark and cinematic and over the top that it's basically a fantasy. This was truly intense from beginning to end. Things never let up because if it wasn't bullying from her squad, it was a wild mission in the field, it was injuries, it was the death of a squad mate, it was training in the field. There was always something going on. And this pair, they had a toxic relationship through almost the entire book. They seesaw back and forth constantly, and because we're primarily in Nell's perspective, we really don't understand the motives that are driving Bone and why he's kind of going back and forth until we find out more about him and his history. And I did like that Bones did remain a mystery because he's supposed to be this dark, mysterious person, and so I liked that we didn't get a ton of his perspective so that we could kind of discover with Nell why he was kind of seesawing back and forth, why he was so emotional and had so much hatred towards her. I will warn you, this author, she really loves to unalive a side character, and just given this premise, I think you can imagine that there's going to be plenty of that, so just fair warning on that one. But I think if you're looking for something toxic, fast-paced, intense, look no further. This was incredible. I gave this one a rating of 4.5 stars because I could have used a little bit of softness. I mean, come on, just a little smooch. So next up, I have The Land of the Beautiful Dead by R.Lee Smith. This is a standalone. It's a thickie. It is a saga. So this is post-apocalyptic, enemies to lovers. It's kind of got like a Beauty and the Beast quality to it. It's fantasy in that the hero is like a god or a demon or something like that. I'm gonna be honest, I actually don't really know what he is. I don't think that's ever explained. I did at one point think this was about vampires. It's not. So this is about Azrael, the eternal, the undying. He rose up from the darkness and basically broke the world. He caused the apocalypse. So it rains black, there's fires everywhere, there's these eaters that are kind of like zombies that wipe out most of humanity. And now he rules from his walled off city called Haven, which I think is smacked on top of London. He is surrounded by his undead court. Now, Lan has never known anything but this world. So she's always known survival, but she just can't give up this little bit of hope that she's always had. And she believes that the world can still change. So she ends up going to Azrael himself, because who else could unmake all of this? And she has decided that she is going to try and convince him to end the Eaters. So she ends up infiltrating his city of Haven and getting herself right into his court, like during mealtime. But instead of death, he offers her a bit of a deal because he's a little bit intrigued by her. She's ballsy, she's interesting. She can try and convince him to end the Eaters, but only if she agrees to submit to his cold and terrifying embrace. This is such a unique book. The world is so gritty and grim and really gross at times. The descriptions are both like beautiful and sometimes meandering, sometimes over detailed. So it gives it like the world is very rich quality, but then sometimes the descriptions are kind of strange. Like at one point she talks about like puking up tears, and it's literally she's just talking about how hard she's crying. The writing is definitely unique. It takes a little second to get like settled in. But once I was settled into this writing, I loved how things were described. Lan, our heroine, is very scrappy and she's got a bit of strategy. She's still very human. She makes these very human errors. And although there's like a lot of times where she could just pander to Azriel in order to try and convince him and woo him in that way, a lot of times she just cannot help but say what's on her mind. Sometimes she really aggravates him, but it seems to endear him to her even more. Now, Azriel is interesting because especially at the beginning of the book, or when he's trying to win an argument, he's a bit of a chatty Cathy, which you wouldn't expect for someone that's undead. Like normally they're like very stoic in a few words. Not this guy. He loves a monologue. He likes to talk over her, and it was very interesting because it was almost like he was like toying with his food because he's so much more intelligent. He really views Lan, especially towards the beginning, as very naive because she's uneducated. She can't even read and write because who has time when you're trying to survive eaters and also like find enough food? And so it's like he knows he has the upper hand, and so he loves to just talk her in circles because he knows he can. But I think what I really loved about this is because this is so thick, you get to spend so much time with these characters and watch as Lan slowly falls for this man against every bit of better judgment. This man has led to the death of so many people, and he's making active choices to continue to harm them. But he has this soft spot for Lan. He wants her to be happy. I think especially seeing the soft underbelly of Azriel towards the end and how tenderly that man cares for her. I dare you not to be a sobbing mess. I dare you. She learns more about like the softer side of Azriel and how he came to make the decisions that he made, but she never stops trying to drive that point home. It always comes back to how can we end the eaters? How can we make the world better for humanity? I will say that despite that aspect, this is primarily character driven, and I wouldn't even consider this particularly smutty, especially considering the setup, but there are these kind of like new challenges and obstacles that they navigate every kind of like 100 pages or so that helps you kind of learn more about the characters and how they make their decisions. And I think because you spend so much time with these characters, I really just grew to care about them, flaws and all. This also has some really fun side characters that I just adored. But this is definitely not a perfect book by any stretch. There were some pacing issues. There was definitely sections where I was like, this could have so easily been edited down. There were sections that I fully just didn't care about at one point. She spent some time trying to put together a garden. I was just kind of like, I don't really give a shit that she's going to be planting some trees. And I'll be honest, when I got done with this book, I was kind of like, this is a 4-star, but I just could not stop thinking about this book. I still can't stop thinking about this book. I think about different scenes. I think about these characters still. So I'm actually going to bump this up to 5 stars. Controversial, I know, but I really enjoyed this one. Okay, now for a bummer. Hollow by Karina Halle. So this is a first in a duet. It's a historical, paranormal, fantasy, Sleepy Hollow retelling. This is about our heroine, Kat. She's arranged to marry her best friend from childhood, Brom. But one night he just kind of up and vanishes, and that leaves Kat's future kind of up in the air. So instead of getting married, like her parents originally planned, they actually end up sending her to the Sleepy Hollow University. It's a very prestigious school that her family has run for some time now. When she gets there, she ends up starting to fall for her older professor by the name of Ichabod Crane. He is new to teaching at the school, and he helps bring out Kat's interest in the occult and in dark magic. And of course, once she decides to move on, Brom just abruptly reappears in her classes. But the thing is, he's like not quite the same. He has these violent bouts and seems to be kind of almost mad. His reappearance also happens to coincide with some violent crimes that begin cropping up in the area by this vengeful ghost called the Headless Horseman. So Kat's determined to get to the bottom of all of this with the help of Crane. This was fine. I don't think this was good. This wasn't really bad. I just didn't really feel like anything in this book was particularly well executed. A lot of this felt very rushed. I never really felt like the world got built out very well. The relationship between Kat and Brom was kind of rushed over very quickly just to be part of the setup. There wasn't a ton of atmosphere despite some very spooky elements that were part of this world. None of the characters really had that much personality, and so the romance just didn't have a lot of chemistry with either of these leading men. I know it's the first book in a duet, but it felt like there was a lot of plot points that were brought up and then kind of dropped. I don't know if those will come back in the next book or not. Just didn't have this very cohesive narrative feel. And I think it really felt to me, because there was so much time spent on the spicy scenes and like getting horned up for one another. I don't know why I did this head move. That it felt like we were rushing through the plot, rushing through the setup just to get to the spice. Also, side note, if you decide to listen to the audiobook, don't. The male narrator sounds way too much like Michael Caine. I'm sorry, but that man is not exactly a sex symbol. So I kept picturing this older man. And also, this male narrator didn't change his voice at all for other characters. So a 20-year-old man, Brom, was narrated the exact same way as this older professor, and they both sounded like Michael Caine. And it just made this book feel really dirty, I'm not gonna lie, because they're both so horned up. Oh, anyway, this was serviceable. If you were really wanting a Sleepy Hollow retelling, this will work, but I just don't think that it's anything too special. So I'm giving it a rating of 3 stars. Next up, I have Descent by Sam Mariano. This is a standalone. It's a captor-captive, kind of like a stalkerish element, dark romance. So our heroine one night is out at a friend's bachelorette party, and she's getting these texts from her most recent ex, who they ended on fine terms. So he's like texting her for help. When she gets a call, she just assumes that it's going to be him. So she takes the call. Turns out it's not him. It's his boss. Her ex's boss is just going to be sending this car to pick her up to help with what? Mind your business. She gets in the car against her better judgment because she's had a few drinks and she's just trying to be a good person, frankly. And it turns out her ex lured her there. His boss had taken an interest in her when they had attended a work party together. And when he found out that these two had separated, he was like, well, she's mine now, obviously. Whether or not she wants him. This book was such a wild ride for me, not only because this is so much non-con and so much like psychological manipulation, and you don't know how much is Stockholm syndrome versus like the heroine making active choices or just kind of overcoming what she thinks is socially acceptable and what isn't, but also because I read this book in like 3 major chunks. So I had started this book months ago. I ended up DNFing it because it was like, I think at the end of August into September when I was having all those focus issues. And I was like, I know I love Sam Mariano and I know I should be loving what I'm reading, but I'm just simply not that invested. And so I was like, I'm gonna put this down because there are things that I like about this and I think I'll enjoy it more later. So I ended up picking it up at the end of last month and I was really having a good time with it. I was really enjoying it, but I got interrupted by the weddings. So I ended up putting it down again and then picking up just the last portion of it. So I think because my reading of this was a little bit disjointed, I don't have as strong of thoughts and as strong of opinions as I would have if I had just been able to sit down and just read this in one shot. And I don't think that has anything to do with the book. I think that just has to do with me. But let's actually get into the content. So this has, as I said, a ton of non-con. It's a lot about the heroine making decisions when there's like really not a lot of good options, and a lot of it is manipulation. So it's her, you know, deciding to do something that she doesn't really want to because resisting and standing on her moral grounds and just saying no actually leads to worse consequences. So she's like, well, if I just give in, this is actually over faster, and how much that changes how she thinks about these situations. And then her slowly losing a bit of her resistance, although she keeps it up through a good chunk of this book. I'm not gonna lie, she really stuck to her guns, but she slowly does start to fall for him, whether it's because she starts to see the good parts of him or the softer sides, especially when she acquiesces to what he wants. He really loves to butter her up, or if it's because of Stockholm syndrome, just because she's been around him for so long. But he slowly alters her behavior and gets her to see things a little bit more from his perspective. And, you know, some of the time, he honestly has good arguments. It's very deeply psychological, and it was very interesting. The hero is very alpha dominant. Oh, my voice is starting to go. I hope it holds up. It's very much his way or the highway. There is no like subtle manipulation of him. He's having none of it. And it's really terrifying and interesting because he's just 10 steps ahead of everybody in his life. So it's fun because I love a hero that's very capable. He's just taking care of things, but it's also scary when you kind of want the heroine to be able to get out of the situation. You're like, I don't know how you do that. And he definitely has some really dark humor, which I think is kind of typical for Sam Mariano's heroes. But I will flag that Sam Mariano really loves the word tummy in this book, and she's used it before in some of her other books, and I hate it. It just makes the heroine feel a little bit juvenile. Anyways, I give this rating of 4 stars. Like I said, I think if I had been able to just sit down and read this in one shot, I would have liked it a whole lot more. But alas, that is not how life shook out. So next up, I read Blood Moon, and this is by Jillian Graves. This is a paranormal fantasy novella. I think it's only like 100 pages or so. The premise of this is that Hazel needs to unwind and just forget a little bit about work. She's kind of in this battle with a neighboring club that recently moved in. They're starting to poach her customers and just doing some kind of shady things of like parking a van advertising for their club right in front of her bar. So when she gets to the Coven Mixer, she's like, I just want to relax. I just want to hang out. I just don't want to be thinking about this situation at work. And she's like, you know what? I'm just going to have a wild little one-night stand romp with this vampire named Vlad because he's there and convenient and has a penis, I guess. But it turns out Vlad can't be a one-night stand because guess he's part of her current nightmare. Thoughts on this one? This one was a bit of a dud for me because I really wanted just a spicy novella, something that was like a little bit paranormal. And the cover of this especially, I was like, well, obviously that's what's gonna be in this book. And it had some great plus size rep. I loved that. Also, it did utilize some fun paranormal elements during the plot and also during spice. That was fun and unique. So I did enjoy those aspects, but I think there was way too much talk about saving the fucking bar. I was really hoping that that was just gonna be like set up for them to interact. And I'm like, we've only got 100 pages. Where's that vampire peen? Let's go. I don't want to be thinking about work and real world issues. And part of that might have just been about the time that I was reading it. I had a lot of work stuff going on. And so I was like, I don't want to read about someone else's work.
I don't care.
And I think that's really why I just didn't really enjoy it as much as I probably could have. And also a full star off because she boinks this dude on her friend's bed. The way my friend would be dead to me if they did that, that's disgusting. That you violated my space with your coochie bits. Keep that to yourself. Anyways, this is just fine. Rating 3 stars. Next up, we have Soul Eater, and this is by Lily Mayne. This is the first in an interconnected series. It's paranormal. This is also weirdly military, but not as military as the other military. Post-apocalyptic fantasy, enemies to lovers. This is an MM romance. In this world, about like 20 years ago, monsters rose up and claimed most of the US for themselves, kind of forcing humans into these like cramped, military-controlled coastal cities. And like the middle of the country is just like the waste. So like you can survive in there, but you probably don't want to because it's this brutal, lawless land and it's full of all these monstrous creatures. And the worst and most feared of them is Win the Soul Eater. Every 3 years or so, he sweeps across the country, leaving nothing but destruction in his wake and these just husks of people. That is until one day, he ends up sparing a soldier. One soldier, and that soldier's name is Danny. He's 23 years old. He's got no family. He really doesn't feel like he has any future, so he just went into the military because he needed to be able to survive. So he was sent to go after Win in the waste, but is terrified when it turns out this monster is taking an interest in him. And now Danny finds himself at the center of something very strange and far more intimate than he ever imagined when he started his mission. So this setup was very gritty, dark. It played out like a movie because it's like this military operation and they're trying to get this monster and then they get this monster and they're capture it and they're trying to interrogate it. There's so much in the beginning portion that I was like, oh my gosh, this is dark, this is gritty, where's this headed? And then it slowly turns into soft, sweet, awkward first love with like end of the world as the backdrop. It was so cute, you guys. I will say that a lot of this book does not have plot, and I didn't care. It's a lot of them walking around, getting to know each other, learn more about, humans and these monsters, and them just kind of being isolated together, and then also having the threat of both humans and monsters kind of coming after them because they're not really liked by either camp. This is also surprisingly spicy. Also gets bonus points because this had a reference to Alien, which actually, funny enough, Nocticadia did as well. So like bonus points for that because nothing endears me more to a book than referencing one of my favorite movies. So, love that for me. This is so unique, so different than really anything I've read, and so much sweeter than I was really expecting. I really enjoyed this. I don't really have any negatives, but I don't like love it on a soul deep level. So I'm giving this one a rating of 4 stars. Now, things do go south towards the end of this month. First, I tried to read Run, Run, Rabbit, and this is by C.M. Nascosta. This is the first book in a new series, but it's also interconnected with another series. very confusing, and I hated it. This is a novella. It's a shifter romance, and it's got like a paranormal office romance aspect to it as well. So this is about Vanessa, and she's a very young lawyer. She's working long hours, and she has a very demanding boss by the name of Grayson. Now, he's a bit of a complication that she doesn't need because he is her boss, but oh damn is he sexy. But there's also a little something about his smell that she just can't resist, and it turns out he feels a little bit similarly. So the lines between professional and personal end up getting blurred every full moon. This has been going on for a while when she is then invited to attend the Lupercalia celebration. I hope I said that right. That sounds close enough. Whatever. This is a very exclusive celebration that she's been invited to, and she knows by the end of the night that she is going to end up with one wolf, but he's got to catch her first. So the premise of this is very fun. I honestly didn't even really mind the office place romance aspects. It was a place that they ran into each other, but we actually didn't hear a ton about their work. And I was like, ideal scenario for me if we're gonna have an office romance. But I think where this really got messy for me was this timeline. Like, what the hell is going on with this timeline? There's two different timelines that you kind of bop between chapter to chapter, but within the chapter, you also will have like flashbacks. And so it got really confusing very quickly. And also I could not tell with the kind of like dual timeline where in the timeline I even was half the time. Just got really confusing because I never knew where in the relationship Grayson and Vanessa really were. The relationship was fun. Initially, it was very toxic. It was very messy because you've got that professional boundary that's being crossed, but they're also like learning more about each other and seeing the softer side of each other. Think about like, what was it, like 50, 60% of the way in, like an actual serious topic got introduced. And I was like, whoa, I didn't sign up for this. Why'd this get thrown in there? And I don't know that I loved the way it was handled, but honestly, I was so off put by that was even introduced that I was like, oh, I'm actually like, I'm out. I was already having a hard time following along with the timeline, and then getting that, I was like, I don't need this to be the complication that we're trying to like navigate in the third act. And also, then I was like looking up because then I was mad. This book is no longer working for me, and I was upset about that. And then I was reading that the ending is a happy for now and not an HEA, and I was just kind of like, well, happy for now in this type of relationship that's kind of like sometimes we're together, sometimes we're not. It's not that serious. Don't catch feelings. What's a happy for now even mean? You know what I mean? So anyways, I DNF'd this. No rating. I think I DNF'd it around like 60, 65%. So then I tried to read The Chase, and this is the last book for this vlog. Vlog? Girl, what? For this video. Anyways, this is The Chase by Reece Barden. This is the first book in a series, and once again, this is a first book in a series that is interconnected with another series, which just means it's not the first book in a series. Oh, I was infuriated. 2 books in a row this happened to me. I'm gonna simmer down. I'm fine. Thank you for asking. This is a paranormal shifter romance, and this has fated mates. So this is about Blake Steele, and Blake Steele feels that his mate is nearby. He hasn't found her yet, but he knows that she's close. And when he picks up the scent one night, his second is like, get out there, boy. Go find your girl. And he's determined to hunt her down. But the clock is ticking because his enemies are circling, she's in danger, and mood madness is starting to take a toll on him. I think this one I read about 40% before I decided to DNF. I know, what a poopy way to end the month, but it was good. I was actually enjoying it for the most part. There wasn't anything that I was really like disliking. There was some very action-packed parts. The hero gets to save the heroine. There's a little bit of caretaking already, but there was just no angst and tension. The heroine is a human that doesn't know about like wolf shifters. She accepted it way too easily, and I was just kind of like, okay, well, immediately I don't buy that. And then 2, they were like immediately just together. He was like, you're my mate, and she was like, sounds great. There wasn't a lot of resistance. There wasn't a lot of build up with that relationship of like trying to explain things or her questioning anything about this. I just didn't feel like I was getting enough angst and tension with the romance. And then because this one again was interconnected with another series, despite claiming to be the first book in a series, I felt like I was missing so much context. So the heroine's sisters have books in the previous series, and they're making appearances in this book, and I felt like I had no clue what was going on with them because apparently they got with wolf shifters. There's beef with certain people that I didn't know anything about, and so I just felt like I was missing a little bit too much context. So again, it's not that I even hated this book. It was just kind of like, okay, there's just too many things where I'm like feeling frustrated that I felt duped, honestly. That kind of annoyed me. And then also I was just like, there's just not enough tension. I was just kind of like, ugh, Why bother? Why bother? I'm just gonna DNF it. It just wasn't delivering what I wanted it to. Those are all the books that I have for you this month. I would love to hear from you if you've read any of these books, if you have similar or different thoughts and feelings. I know I read a lot of very popular books that y'all had a lot of opinions about when I did my TBR video, so I would love to hear your thoughts and feelings about these books. Also, let me know what you've been reading, what you've been loving, what you've been hating. How did your month go reading-wise? I want to hear anything and everything related to your reading for October. But with all of that, thank you so much for being here. Seriously, I appreciate it. These videos are always so long, and you made it to the end, so you're a real one. Don't forget to like this video if you did end up liking it, and don't forget to subscribe if you would like more content from me. The purple hair will be here for a minute. Little fun, little upgrade for you. And I do really, really hope that I see you on my next video. Bye-bye. Ooh, damn it, I forgot to take this ring off. Hopefully that wasn't clocking the whole video. Anyway, bye.